All right. Well, namaste to everybody. And I hope you guys are staying warm with all the stuff. I don't know where y'all are here. When I woke up this morning, it was 1 degree. And the snow is snowing. And it's just like Christmas all over again. So... If you wish, if all you wanted for Christmas was your 2 front teeth, you might have got that. But it's 8 below degrees in Louisiana, Missouri. So it is a bit cool, and we apologize for the delay, but we had some issues related with the coal. And so blessings to each and every one of you guys. I am just so tickled with all that is starting to come out about the reality and the truth of who and what we are, and maybe what this thing is a lot more about. We certainly have embarked on the greatest journey that ever existed, and it becomes constantly more and more, I guess, more and more revealed, more and more potent, the largeness of the lies, and how hard they work to propagate this false reality to keep us entrapped. And yet, once your eyes begin to be open, then it's almost impossible as well to unsee it. And hopefully, if your eyes are beginning to be opened, you won't want to unsee it, which is really a lot more potent than you simply can't. So we've been looking at James. There's some questioning, because here again, I constantly, this is for me, maybe if you've been an ex-Christian and you grew up in Christianity and you had all of those pat answers they gave you down, and they were part of who you were, and tied with your ego, so you were like this thing. And it's been really crazy to find texts that predate all of that, and then to see how different the pictures are, but to also be able to see how they orchestrated these lies so easily. But the lie sustaining was only dependent on the truth not being able to come out. And so they suppressed that. As I've talked about, some of you may not even know what the Library of Alexandria was, but it was the largest collection of ancient writings that has ever existed in humanity, and somehow it just mysteriously burnt all of those ancient documents. And so if you've asked the question, maybe it will help you to find more confidence in the fact that many of the things I'm sharing, that if you were a Christian, are going to be really contrary. Those of you who knew me knew that I was pretty dogmatic about the Bible being truth. And so it's quite obvious to me that the greatest of minds have believed the same thing. And so what I mean by that is their work, their diligence to hide the truth from us was very, 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 very strong. And so if you find yourself in that questioning state, wondering what is and what isn't, it's okay. That's a good place to be. But on the other side, there's a reason why we're in this time that we're living in, which is a really unique, special time. Why these things are all starting to come out. And the ball kind of started rolling in the 1940s with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And of course, if you know any of the history, which I've probably shared more times than I can remember, the reality of the Dead Sea Scrolls is even though those scrolls were found in Palestine, even though those scrolls predate Christianity, it's quite amazing that the people in Jerusalem that were overseeing the scrolls were the Catholic Church. I really do not know what leverage they played against the Hebrew scholars. Maybe the Hebrew scholars allowed them to finance the work. I don't know how that works, but it does strike me as awfully odd that Christianity would go into Israel and would usurp the authority of Israel, and they would be the one that defined what text got deciphered and the exposure of those. And if it hadn't have been for Robert Eisenman, you wouldn't know about them very much anyways. So there's been there's a lot of track work for you if you want to find out if what I'm saying is true. It's not that difficult to do. And so we've been looking at the Nag Hammadi, which was another set of text, actually in many ways almost more potent, but I often go through thoughts in my mind about when we were reading when I was reading the Dead Sea Scrolls. I was still under the paradigm, under the prison of archonic power and mind control, and there was a lot of it that didn't make sense, and now I know why it didn't make sense, because they said things that are contrary to Christianity, and now I find out that of course they were, because the Gnostic teachings, which were the ancient teachings, also do the same. So that's a little ground and a little legwork, but just suffice to say, from what I shared with you guys on Wednesday night, I just simply would pose a question: have you begun to wash off the mud? That is one of the most pivotal teachings probably that I suspect I will ever do until the next one. Quite profound. What if you could begin to recognize inside yourself that you are now, you always have been divine. You've simply been so covered over with mud that your light could not shine, even for you to see it. Because I'll be honest with you, if you will focus on you seeing the light that you are, you won't have to worry about the world seeing it. Your behaviors will change, your perspectives, your thought processes. You won't become a rebel, although in Christianity's eyes you're certainly a rebel, a heretic. Many Gnostic leaders have been destroyed, including James, and we're going to find out that that's where we're at in the revelation of James. That James was told beforehand. If you remember the Gospel of Thomas, when we read it, that Yeshua folded up his robe and he gave it to James, and he said, "Here, James, the world was created for you." And he had 3.5 years. Well, James didn't have much more time, but it's quite amazing as truth comes out, James begins to float back to the surface of the top. And they did a good job and gave you a few pieces. I suspect that there wasn't near as much conflict between Paul and them as we have been told. It's often the way we have to create I guess it's a protagonist. We have to create an enemy, okay? That's how we justify things. Well, they're an enemy, so it's okay how I behaved. And you do it every day, all day long, actually. Uh, and so it takes a really special person, first off, to recognize that, and then secondly, to do something about it. Some people recognize it, write it off, and continue to behave as they have. So just because you hear truth is not a fail-safe that you're going to quit doing the false. It just simply means that now you're accountable. Whether you realize it or accept it or not is irrelevant. It's still the case. And so if we can grab a hold of that reality for just a minute here, that we are light, and then ask ourselves, what does that mean? What does it mean that I am already light? When I say those words sitting here talking to y'all, all of a sudden, mysteriously, supernaturally, as Paul told us, that behold, all old things pass away and all things become new. That's not something that happens overnight. But inevitably, if we continue to expose our light, inevitably Paul's words will be fulfilled. We will. The old will pass away. Your old bad feelings, your old emotions, your old lack of control, you're old. And I could sum all of that old up into one word if I could, and that word would be your ego. All of those facets, for those of you that haven't, if you get an opportunity to watch the little docu-short that they've done recently on Jim Carrey, you want a picture of what it means to go from one thing to another. He is a very good living example of what it means to come from being in the matrix, being in the false you, and he acknowledges it. So I assure you, he's been studying Gnosticism for quite some time, and it has begun to manifest. But he said, I got tired of playing the character Jim Carrey. I now have a desire to be a true, present, authentic me. And me is not Jim Carrey. And if you guys will grab a hold of that reality, I'll tell you, the world is beginning to shake for those people that do so. The power, the source, is it going to get difficult? Yes. Is it going to be things that seem confusing and chaos? Yes. But that has nothing to do with the fact that you are divine and you are light. And so maybe for you that's a lot to grab, and if it is, that's fair. Just be honest about that, but don't stop. Just because you were honest that it's a lot to grab isn't grounds for you to say, well, it's too much and I won't do it anymore. I mean, not that people won't say that, but that's not a very wise decision. And so I hope, in fact, you will, in spite of whatever struggles you have personally, whatever paradigms that you desire not to let go of, whatever mask you want to keep about yourself, I can encourage you to let them go. But on the other side, if you choose to hold on to them, you'll remain the person that you are. But it's only when you're willing to let go, to empty yourself of all that is falsehood. And friend, your humanity is a falsehood. So when we go to the Gospel of John in the Bible, and we read that John says, I must decrease, so that what he was really saying, because I used to hear this and I had a totally different picture, but John said, I must decrease. When he says I, he's speaking about his human self. I must decrease so that he can increase. And the concept is the he is the true self, the higher self. And so he was telling us one of the most amazing spiritual mystical truths that existed in the Bible, and yet no preachers I've ever met really understood what John was saying, because you can't understand it and be in Christianity. You just can't. Your understanding is closed by the power, the perception of the archons. They're not enemies. They're not something to be fought. They're something to be recognized. And that's really kind of an amazing piece, because really by recognizing, they, like everything else, will begin to crumble because now you're not blind anymore and you can see what you couldn't see before. And it's so beautiful because that's what this is all about, friends. This is about us pulling the scales off of our eyes. Just another metaphor for you. The scales that were on Paul's eyes were not physical scales. It was awakening to who he was. And the message that came from higher self, which is the Christ in you, the hope of glory, told him what the truth was, and Paul listened. The truth is speaking to you now. And the question is, will you listen? So James professes that Jesus came with knowledge, and Jesus goes to his passing. So we're now at the state prior to the thing. We get an intimate little piece of Gnosticism that comes between the dialogue. I do believe with what I showed you over the last couple of weeks, my picture has changed. I was told my whole life that James was the brother of Jesus. I'm not personally convinced that James the Just was in fact his blood brother. What I believe is being spoken of is that they were spirit brothers. And when you realize that, then you realize when someone says to you, do you not know that we are all one? You can then understand what was being said there. Because truthfully, the spirit connection that exists amongst light workers is infinitely more powerful and potent in existence than any blood relative you could ever have. And so they're really speaking at a much higher level, but to a human mind, it would be a lower level, so they had to concoct the story that they were blood brothers. That's what made it potent. And so, James says, Rabbi, if they arm themselves against you, still there is no reason to blame you. You have come with knowledge to reprove their forgetfulness. Dear friends, in that one line, you got the total summation of the only reason that the ascended master, Yahusha, even manifest in this earth. But I'm going to tell you something else. All of those who are becoming Christ conscious, if you would use that term, all of you who are becoming Christ consciousness, to be Christ consciousness, you must have a form in you of that same spirit. If you have any other purpose than to help people remember what they were taught to forget, then you're working your own line. You're not working the universal line. Because the universal line of all beings, whether they come through a channeling, whether they come through direct knowledge, if the message does not speak to humanity, you're listening to a false spirit. There is only one message. There is only one truth. And that message is you have been coerced into forgetting what you are, and what you are is light. That is the message. And until you begin to believe that for yourself, those words are useless to you. But when you begin to believe that in your inner self, you begin to recognize that, hey, I am more than this human. When you begin to recognize that inside of yourself, your world is beginning a radical transformation. Is it a long journey? Yes. Does it have potholes that we seem to step in all along the way? Yes. Can we conquer them? Absolutely. So he says, you have come with knowledge to reprove, to reprimand, to expose our forgetfulness. That's his purpose. You have come with remembrance to reprove our ignorance. Wow. All those times you were told that Jesus came to die so his blood would somehow cleanse you from all unrighteousness. And it never worked. If his blood was so powerful, friends, why did we even need to go to church? Wouldn't we have all been just emphatically cleaned? But that wasn't the case, because as soon as you went to the church and heard the truth, you actually simply began the journey of not remembering what you were, of seeing what you are. And there's a huge difference between those two, because one is spiritual and the other is physical. And so it's not such a fun picture to look at ourselves, humanity-wise. We find lots of failings. We find lots of bad things that we do and did and said and were and thought, and it just goes on. And all it does is feed you with fear that I'm going to be lost and I'm going to spend eternity in hell. And you stay in fear because you're scared to death. And so you try harder to do, and the harder you try to do, the worse you become, because now you do all kinds of other wrong things, thinking that you're somehow doing the right thing. Are you hearing me? If you're alive and you've been in Christianity, I promise you, you've been living in that paradigm. I know, because I lived in that paradigm. So, he says you came with remembrance. So when Yeshua came, he brought remembrance with him. He brought the beginning. I would like to say it like this. The truth of the matter is the awakening that we're experiencing now started 2,000 years ago by Yeshua coming to this earth. He came here with a very distinct, only two things that he intended to do. He came to show us our forgetfulness and then to tell us what it was that we had forgotten. And if you have those two, and if you open your heart to those two, your world's fixing to rock, friends. This is amazing, wonderful, beautiful. You can quit beating yourself up about your failures, and instead you should learn to observe them, recognize that they're failures, but that they also are not you. I'm talking the true you, the perfect you, the one that everybody says you can never be. And how many of you have used that cliche saying? Well, nobody's perfect, really. Well, I say, who says nobody's perfect? Is that you saying that? My higher self doesn't say that. Humanity says that. And so you then get to make a choice. Do I follow humanity or do I follow my higher self? And I'll give you the answer. Choose your higher self. And so to reprove our ignorance is not say that you're stupid. Ignorance simply means that we were hit with forgetfulness, our remembering how amazing and powerful of sovereign gods we are, and that source is us and in us and through us and around us, and everything is functioning in the world in us. That's another profound revelation, that when you begin to get it, that it's not you living out an experience, it's an experience living out through you. It totally reverses a lot of these screwed up thought processes that we have. And so you have come with remembrance to reprove their ignorance. I was worried about you. For you have come down into profound ignorance. And can't we if you're enlightening at all, can you not see the ludicrousness of most of the things that is our world? Right? But you were not defiled by any of it. Can I give you another little secret here that maybe nobody has told you, and it may be a while before somebody does? I'm going to say this right here. Friends, it doesn't matter how many horrible, abominable things that you have done. They have not corrupted your light. Your light, your consciousness is incorruptible. You hear that term pop up in Paul's writings, and nobody knows what the hell it means. What does it mean that I can be created incorruptible? Why? Because you looked at yourself this morning when you got up and had your first bad thought and knew you weren't supposed to have that thought, and you had it anyways, and then you took the bait, you took the hook, line, and sinker, and then maybe you acted into that bad thought. And because you see that picture, it's like, oh my God, I could never be. So it's not difficult to understand why every one of us have a problem with accepting the reality that we are not broken. It's very difficult because of what we see. Yeshua came to help us see a different picture. We were looking through the wrong eyes. We were looking through the flesh eyes, and through the flesh eyes, there's actually really very little that's all that good about our lives. But when you begin to look through the spirit eyes, you see that those are nothing but thoughts that we had and that other people had. And those thoughts have corrupted what is pure and what is right. But pure and right still exist. It's just corrupted it to you. Once again, there is no room in our lives, friends, for shame and guilt. And as we grow, what you will have the pleasure to experience is the reality that the more that you keep washing that mud off and the more that you keep exposing the supernatural divine light that you are, the more you do that, the more you have control over flesh to keep flesh from doing those things that made you feel shame and guilt and fear. How beautiful. So everything that Christianity could never do, recognizing one simple concept that you are divine and you are a divine spirit living inside of a human body, and those two are separated. Now, the separation concept is very prevalent in the spiritual realm right now, and so I do feel like it's very important. Because I said something that sounds counterproductive. If you've heard the truth, you may think that I'm saying something different. There is a separation that has to occur, but that separation is not from my higher self and God. That separation is from my higher self in my brokenness of humanity. Are you hearing me? Humanity is humanity. Humanity is not the light. Humanity is never going to be the light. And there is brokenness in humans. But there is no brokenness in our higher self. So as we move in to the revelation, the direct knowledge of who we truly are, then that becomes less powerful, and the light that is us becomes infinitely stronger. And the more that we continue to wash and rub, and the more that we can... I wish I could get somebody to get the revelation about the time that they've spent washing their car and waxing their car, and they would apply that to their soul, because if they did, they would blossom like the noonday sun. It's absolutely crazy. There is no power on this earth or in any realm who can stop you when you begin to learn who you are. If you want victory, this is the path. And he says, for you have come down into profound ignorance, for you were not defiled by any of it. And I want to say, I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Dear friend, you know how broken you are as a human, but I'm here to tell you today that you are not defiled in your spirit. You're not broken in your spirit. You're not lost in your spirit. And when I say spirit, I'm talking about your God particle higher self, your full consciousness. And he was not defiled by it, any of it. You have come down into thoughtlessness. So when you guys hear me talk about thoughtless people, thoughtless people, thoughtless people, thoughtless people, I'm not the only one. But your memory stayed with you. See, when he came in what they did, what the archonic powers do, is remove our remembering of who we are. We didn't forget that we're divine light because we're somehow failed. We forgot it because it was stripped from us. And Yeshua came in because he is the first one that is. He came in under the power that the archons have no power over him, and so they were useless to try to take his memory of what he is. And they never did take it away from him. He remained light whether he was in a body, whether he was out of the body. The message didn't change when he was a 12-year-old boy from when he was a 30-year-old man. It was always the same. You are light, and in you is no darkness at all. But that's not your human. And so you have come down into thoughtlessness, but your memory stayed with you. How is Yeshua different than us? That statement right there is one of the most telling that there is. Because if you'll notice, James says, you did not forget like we did. You walked in mud. Oh, look, did you see that? Somebody told you on Wednesday about you being light covered with mud, and then here it is, it pops in the text. And to be quite honest with you, even though I've read these texts multiple times, I did not put those correlations of what I said Wednesday night and that verse right there together until today, even though I read this even today. You walked in mud, and your garments did not get dirty. So what could we surmise out of that concept? Is it really true that we can walk through all of the horrible stuff that is reality? That we can walk through all of this pride and all of this ego, and we can walk through everything that is horrible and contrary to our higher dimension and still be able to stay our higher dimension? See, that's why Yeshua says a term. Many people are scared to death, and they run from bad people. They run from people covered with tattoos. They run from people who wear pentagrams upside down on their neck. They run from everything that makes them feel eerie. The eerie comes because you are functioning in your human realm. When a person of light sees those people, he begins to feel sorrowful for their human side and know that they have an inside. That's a totally different concept. How will love on this earth grow? I just gave you the way. The way that love is going to grow is as people enlighten, they will begin to see through the facade that is called self. It's just a facade, friends. Jim Carrey called it a character. They're exactly the same thing. It's just an outward picture that you project to the world that this is who I am. And the reality is that is true, but only in your eyes. When you begin to change your eyes, that reality leaves. That's why you have the ability to create your own reality. How do you do that? By ridding yourself of the false reality. And so, his garments did not get dirty. You were not inundated with their filth, even though you came and walked in it. There's also a little metaphoric teaching here about the reality of the archons against us. Okay? You will learn as you go along that as we become light and as we encounter light, as we begin to see that we are not separated from God, that we have never been separated from God, that we have always been God incarnate in a body. That is the truth. That if that weirds you out, makes you hate me because I just committed blasphemy, tough crap. It's the truth. You are God incarnate. When Yeshua told the Pharisees that, do you not know that you are mighty ones? He obviously didn't think it. They thought it was blasphemy. That's how I know people will say what I just said is blasphemy, because they did it to him. Truth is truth. And so you were not inundated with filth. Friends, can I just tell you, James just gave us one of the most beautiful commandments, if you would, but it's not a commandment to us as far as a behavior. It's a commandment to the universe about where they do not have any power. And they do not have any power against our divine selves for their filth to infiltrate us. We, as light, remain pure light. The only question is are you blanketing your pure light with filth? That's the mud. And they did not apprehend you. And that's a teaching and that is coming out, and I hope to share this in such an amazing, positive, wonderful way that everyone who hears me's life is radically flipped on its head. Because, my friend, we do not have to struggle anymore. We need to recognize archons are there. We need to recognize their influences in every thought process that exists in life. But if I am on the right path, then their influence is no longer relevant for me. If you are functioning in your flesh, you should have concerns about archons. If you are walking in the light, they can't grab you. That's why it's so important that you understand from here to the astral plane and 7 layers above into the pleroma, they will attempt to control you. You only need one tool to go into the presence and be rejoined to the ultimate, unspeakable, unknowable, unimaginable light. You only need one thing, and that is the revelation that you are also light. It's that potent. The true knowledge of who we are is that potent. And so, they did not apprehend you. Why? Because they couldn't. I was not like them. But I have clothed myself in all that is theirs. Do you hear what James just said? I know that I'm light, but still in all. So that statement is every one of us, friends. The reality is that we're not like them. But we have, and yes, we've had lots of help. We call them parents and governments and schools and society and life and fear. And we've dressed ourselves with everything that will never produce success for us if success is returning to the fullness. But so see, once again, I have a choice. I can clothe myself with their filth, or equally and actually more potently, I also have an option to not clothe myself with their filth. I have clothed myself in all that is theirs. There is in me forgetfulness. So what we really see, friends, is it's almost a lament at this point to Yeshua of James recognizing his humanity versus Yeshua's light. He says, wow, you came and did all of this amazing stuff, and none of these things that I'm fighting, none of those things affected you. But then I recognize that I'm the one that dressed myself in those clothes, which is the beginning revelation that if I dressed myself in those clothes, what must also be true? I can undress myself from those clothes. What an amazing story. What an amazing, if you guys don't leave here today so full and so high, I don't know what the heck's wrong with you. This is the greatest news that's ever been broadcast to humanity. I can tell you whether you believe it or realize it right now, and it has nothing to do with me. But I am telling you right now, there are ripples going through the universe because of these words. We absolutely, totally believe that we're nothing and we have no power. It's only when you can begin to see that you are something and you are sovereign. You are sovereign. It's only when you begin to believe that, dear one, that you will begin to watch your life radically shift. And it doesn't mean everything's going to get better for you. If that's your picture of what radical shift is, you're going to be really disappointed. Because sometimes it brings that your life is worse. Sometimes you can get a revelation and the first thing that happens is everything starts seeming like it's against you. You should rejoice. They don't need to be against you when you're for them. And so, he says, I was not like them, but I have clothed myself in all that is theirs. Wow. We've all done that. Did we do it knowingly? Absolutely not. Can we undo it knowingly? Yes, absolutely. But I have clothed myself in all that is theirs. There is in me forgetfulness. I want to do a thing, I call it an honest thing. I want all of you that are honest, that want to be honest and want to grow and want to learn and want to experience this move that is going on in the world. And I want you to just say one simple thing that James just said. I have in me forgetfulness. Did you know that recognizing your failings without your failings condemning you are the way to victory? Did I cause shame in any of you? I hope I'm not. If I did, you haven't been listening very well. Because the confession of this is exactly what James was talking about. You must confess your faults one to another that you can be healed. How are you healed? Because as we begin to acknowledge who the flesh us is, it begins to crumble. Every day, every step, every revelation weakens the bond that it has on your mind and opens space for the light to fill. So I say all the time, it's a very long process. But I'm going to tell you right now, a little glimpse of light that comes through is huge to the human mind. We have many of those. They should be happening daily, not because we deserve it, because we know it. It's not about deserving. You probably live in that, and some of you have said words. I certainly have been really guilty of this. Well, probably I really don't deserve it. I'm such a bad person. Some of you have probably said the same things at least once in your life. And you couldn't understand why everything was against you. What if the fact that you came to that revelation, we're not getting this because we deserve it. You weren't holy enough to become light. You were light whether you were holy or unholy. And that's a really hard thing sometimes with the way that they programmed us. It's really hard to kill that programming and to see yourself and begin to make that line and that distinction that I am light. The true me is light, and that is not me. And I promise you, the minute that begins to become revelation inside of you, you haven't won, but you have won. So, he says there is forgetfulness in me. But look at this. But I also remember what is not theirs. What's he talking about? If you understand, the archons do not have the divine spark that we have. I want to say that to you again. Archons are constantly functioning in all kinds of mental processes. They tell you every day over and over and over. They reinforce who you are as a human. And you wake up and you believe that, and you go to bed and you believe that. And you wake up and you believe that, and you go to bed and you believe that. All they have to do is tell you that you're right. I'm a horrible human being. Yeah, by golly, you sure are. They're just reinforcing. Part of the archons are processes that are used in our mind to destroy us and keep us from light. Now that we know that this is simply just a process, if we will take the time, we have the ability to begin dismantling that process. I'm not that. I am light. I don't care what I did. I don't care how horribly I behaved, and I don't deny that I did it. But that's not me. And I promise you, if you'll walk around all day putting that into yourself, you'll be amazed at how much peace you'll start finding. Because you begin to believe that you are light and you're not that broken human that needs a savior. And the minute you begin to do that, friends, you have begun the greatest journey that you will ever experience. And so, I have made a choice to clothe myself with all that's theirs. Theirs is in me forgetfulness. Not one, he isn't shamed when he says these words. They're matter of factly. Okay? But he says, but I remember what is not theirs. And I will tell every one of you, dear friends, you have, unless you are one of the soulless beings that is on the earth, you have, even if it's the faintest glimmer in the back of your mind, you still have a knowing that there is something more and that you are something more. If your intuition, which is your higher self speaking to you, so I'll give you a new definition for intuition. Intuition is not that you have some mystical thing going on. Intuition is your higher self breaking through your subconsciousness and telling you something from the realm of reality. So when somebody has an intuition for higher self, or you could call it full consciousness, at that level, full consciousness knows all the answers. That's why people, as they grow in consciousness, they become more intelligent, they think better, all of a sudden they can discern, all of a sudden they begin to perceive things. Nothing was really different, but man, it was different. I saw things that I didn't see before. Maybe you've been guilty of saying those words. I've seen things that I haven't ever seen before. That's an amazing blessing, friends. So, but I remember what is not theirs, and that is one of the greatest words of hope that exists. So if you don't do anything else but take your time and you simply spend time looking back and reflecting, and you can ask your higher self to bring to you remembrances of the times when you actually had little bitty glimpses that you are more than just the human that exists on this earth. I promise you, little by little, those pieces will begin to manifest in your life. And you'll begin to see. And what does that bring? Usually it brings peace, because now you know what the truth is. That there is, no matter what it looks like, no matter how it behaves, no matter how I have to get there, I am now becoming conscious that there is something in me that is more than the me that I see. And so, but I remember what is not theirs. There is in me, and unfortunately here again, we have several lines that are lost. I always hate when these lines are lost, because I promise you they were all profound, but that's what happens when they have to bury texts to keep them from the Catholic Church for 2,000 years in Egypt in clay pots in the dirt. I'm very thankful. My mind can go past those pieces that are missing, and I can glean from those pieces that we have. Hallelujah to somebody. But I remember what is not theirs. There is in me. Now, in context with what it says, I'm not going to tell you what James actually said, but I believe that my perception says that James just said that I remember that I have something they don't, and there is in me the light, the divine spark of God, and I assure you there breaks no context for me to add that in my mind. So what is James telling us? He's just carrying the next line of what it was that he remembered, that he is divine. And I am in there, okay? I have found knowledge. The word that interpreted knowledge there is typically gnosis, which is the thing that is to be desired. Gnosis is knowledge. Okay? That's why they are called Gnostics. I have found knowledge. You have found knowledge. If anything that I have said to you today resonates, dear friends, you have every right to say the same words that James said to the Master. Have you fulfilled all that there is? Have you made all of the changes? Have you walked? No, you haven't done that. That's not the statement that's being made. Simply finding it is the beginning of every journey. And then of course we lose some not for their sufferings. And then James says, yet I'm afraid of them since they have power. He's still talking to Yeshua. He was making a statement and drawing a thought process, and now he goes back into dialogue. He says, yet I am afraid of them, since they have power. Tell me, what will they do? What can I say? What word can I utter to escape them? Who is the them? Do you know? The them is the archons. Wow. So here is James, a brother, associated brother, whether it's blood or whether it's spirit. Here is a guy that has closeness to be standing with Yeshua, and he asks him simple questions that if you are desirous to walk into the light that you are, I suspect everyone who does desire to go to the light has these questions. Who are they? What can they do to me? And how do I defeat them? Okay? And in this case, you notice that he doesn't even put it into the concept of warrior. He actually puts it in the concept of how do I get away from them. And the master says, James, I praise your understanding and your fear. Did anybody hear that? So is there any possibility for fear to be a positive as much as it is a negative? It's just dependent on how a person uses it. Is there a place for fear to be a good thing? If you're standing on the sidewalk and a car is running 105 miles an hour down Georgia Street, which is a 30-mile zone, and that car begins to veer over the lane headed directly towards you, and then you recognize that that car is pointed at you, and instead of the brakes and the tires squealing, you hear the motor accelerate more. Should you have fear? It'll be the thing that saves you. So once again, we get out of balance, and a lot of spiritual people are telling everything is fear, 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 fear. And the reality is that is true, but it's not full truth. Full truth is that there is certainly a place where fear and consciousness work together for preservation. But that's not the fear that you live your life in every day, worried about what's going to happen to you. We have inside of us instincts called fight or flight. That is tied to fear. And it is positive, I promise you. If somebody is coming at you with a gun, you will, without even trying, you will feel fear. The next question is what do you do with that fear? And that's the differentiation. And the master says, James, I praise you for your understanding and your fear. In other words, the fact that he has concerns about these powerful forces called archons that he's been being taught about by Yeshua, he has a fear because they can rob you of everything. You will end up coming back into another more horrible life. And so Yeshua commends him for that fear. Just hold that, because I don't want us to focus. We aren't supposed to be functioning in fear. But I want you to understand, when you feel fear, it isn't somehow you've come out of your light. You have to view that, determine how to use it, and then let it go. That's how it works. If you continue in your commitment, okay, so what is he saying? You have to view it. Do not be concerned about anything other than your deliverance. So do you see, he says, I commend fear, and then he tells us how to control the fear. How? By not being concerned except for our deliverance. We're still talking about the archons, friends. How are we going to deliver? There are lots of people, friends, that today will leave this earth. Every one of those people will encounter archons immediately. Every one of them. You can go cut the TV on and you can sit for months listening to near-death experiences. And there is one thing about every one of them that's exactly the same. The minute they leave this body, they cross the astral plane and they encounter a being. Nobody seems to know what those beings are because nobody pays or studies what the Gnostics taught. They believe what the mediums tell them, that they're soul friends. They're not soul friends. They're archons. They're not spirit guides. They're archons. They control the Akashic record and many other things. And so he says, do not be concerned about anything other than your deliverance. For look, I shall complete what is destined here on the earth, as I once said from the heavens, and I shall reveal to you your deliverance. So he just tells us, he sets the stage. Yeshua himself tells us how he brought our deliverance. What is our deliverance? Our deliverance is consciousness of our consciousness. That I am God. I am the divine spark. And so, for look, I shall complete what is destined here on earth, as I once said from the heavens, and I shall reveal to you your deliverance. James says, Rabbi, how is that? After this, will you appear to us again? After they have arrested you and you complete what is destined, you will go up to the one who is. And I hope I can help you guys begin to get this. This nonsense that we've been brainwashed about praying to a foreign god somewhere outside of us is a destroying factor. They taught you that because they wanted you to believe. First off, you never saw that God that was outside of you in the first place. They painted a picture on pages for you of what this God was, and you believed it. He was a man sitting on a throne, and his robe filled the temple. Millions and millions and millions of angels sitting around him. And that's not at all what the Gnostics believed. The Gnostics would have condemned you probably had you said you knew what the pleroma was. Because it's unknowable. How can you know everything that is? You can't. It's impossible. And it is an abomination for you to even say that you do know who it is and what it is. It's infinite. It's infinite light. It is now and it has always been. And so, I shall reveal to you your deliverance, that you are eternal light, and that is your deliverance, friends. He hung his body up on a cross in front of the world, and it still reverberates 2,000 years later, and nobody knows what that even means. Did he die? You're going to find out here in a second. They actually physically touched each other after he died. So if you now want to get a new revelation about how amazingly potent you might really be, you ought to listen. And so James says, Rabbi, how is that? After this, will you appear to us again? Question. After they have arrested you and you complete what is destined, you will go up to the one who is. And I think that's very appropriately, according to the Gnostics, that was the term to use about what we would call God, the one who is. Because we have no ability to explain who that is. And the Master said, James, after this I shall make everything clear to you, not only for your sake, but also because of the unbelief of people. He came because of the unbelief of people. He came because people had bought the line that they were humans and not spirit. So you waited, and I've heard arguments in the Christian church about this, because we're told by Yahusha that the Father would give you the Spirit. And everybody's going, oh, well, you got to speak in tongues or you ain't got the Spirit. I've heard that so many times, it's not even funny. And people go, and oh, they got the Spirit. I lived that stuff for 40 plus years, friends. They shake a little bit, jerk and dance like a chicken, fall down, roll around on the ground, break their glasses, get kicked in the face. I've seen all of that in church, and that's holy. My goodness. As a human, I should have brought my friends in there and got them filled with the Holy Ghost so I could kick the crap out of them and everybody would think it was sacred. Are you serious? Because of the unbelief of people. That's why he came. And had he not come, friends, we would never know. We would all be on an archonic cycle as long as the 4 billion years, which we're only halfway through, exist. You would be for the next 2 billion years in and in and in and in and in and in and in ad nauseum. And then none of us even know at the end of the 4 billion years what the heck's going to happen. So maybe it's an extension of another 8 billion years. No hope to get out of the prison. You might get to experience a lot of things in a whole bunch of lives, but I believe there's more. So why did he come? Because people didn't believe who they were. That faith may come to be amongst them. For many will attain to faith, and they will grow in, and of course here we have 2 missings, and they will grow in, I would say probably strength, stature, okay? Until they come to the revelation. Yeah. And after this, I shall appear to rebuke the rulers. So if you're waiting, if you're waiting on Jesus to come back, friends, the only reason he's coming back again, according to his words in the writings of James, the only reason he's coming back is to rebuke the archons. He's going to destroy their system. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen, though, before the end of the 4 billion years. So if you're waiting around for Jesus to come back, you probably could smoke a cigarette and have something to eat, because it's going to be a while.
Would that also be the 2 years?
Well, yeah. When Dave asked a question, I think it's very appropriate. Many people don't understand. Okay, so I'm going to probably break off. Let me finish this section, Dave, and I'll come. Give me just a second. And after this, I shall appear to rebuke the rulers, and I shall show them that there is one who is invincible. So that means total defeat. The gates of hell will not prevail against. It's a Christianized version of what was just said. If that one is seized, he will seize all of them. But now I shall go, remember the things I have told you, and let them enter your heart. Because this is a heart-driven thing, friends. When I talk about direct revelation, when you know, people say it all, oh, I'm so in love with that girl, I just know that it is. Nobody has to tell that person about that. And it's exactly the same way when we recognize that we are. When you begin to truly recognize that you are, I promise you, there ain't a million people that can make you believe otherwise. So, remember the things I have told you, and let them enter your heart. James said, Master, I shall hurry to do as you have said. And the master said goodbye to him, and he fulfilled what was fitting. When James heard of the master's suffering, he was deeply distressed. Okay, now, back to your question, Dave. Ask it again, because I want to share it with...
So he's coming back to rebuke the rulers. And so we're talking about the archons. So
Right.
that means the demiurge and then Yaldabaoth, which created those, right?
Correct. Correct.
All of those he's coming back to.
Correct. Okay, Dave is asking a question. I want to give a little more fullness, because these things, we need to talk about them and help you. I'm going to start with the demiurge. Yaldabaoth is the offspring of Sophia. Okay, Sophia is also coming back. Wisdom, divine wisdom, is coming back. Many of you are experiencing Sophia already, friend. So it's not like this is some weird thing that's going to happen. Sophia, she is the one that gave us the divine spark. Because the demiurge was blind, it was ignorant. That's what Yaldabaoth means, is the one that's blind. Okay, he can't see, he couldn't see. That's why he made the concept. So you have in Gnostic documents, you have them telling us that the one that actually said that I am the only God that there is and there will be no one before us, which is the Jews accepted as Yahweh, is actually the demiurge. Those words were stolen from the Gnostics by the Jews, and the demiurge is the one. So you could almost say, well, those people are worshiping the archon, and that is a true statement. That's why they stay under the load of all of the rules, and yet they still fail. It is a sure set of rules that will make sure you keep failing and you keep coming in. So when Yeshua comes back, I like the term archons as a whole, because the demiurge is the creator of the archons. So when I say archons, I'm talking about all that are applicable in that realm. And you don't know about the demiurge. You may not know that he was actually the precursor to what they changed the name to Yahweh. We know where Yahweh came from. He was a Canaanite god. He was on the bottom rung of the pantheon. He was actually a nobody god, and they gave him this stupid little people over here called Israel and wrote a narrative. Well, look where the demiurge has the Jews now. The Jews have lived in constant conflict, and they've stayed in constant darkness. And until the light begins to shine, that's why Yeshua went there, was to help them, because they were in darkness. Okay. So does that help at all, brother? Yeah, there is no power. Dear one, please listen to me again. And I know I'm a passionate person and all of those things. It's just who I am. If you don't like it, I'm sorrowful but tough. The reality of it is that we are capable. When we begin to recognize who we are, the whole, and that we are not separate from source. Look at yourself in your mind and say, I am source. For you, for many people I know, that's a very difficult thing at this time. They're not yet progressed to the revelation that we are light. They're still functioning in the carnal realm, and that's not said to shame anybody. It's just part of the progression. As you grow, you'll see more. If you continue to look, you'll find. But if you quit looking, you'll just revert back to what you were. It's a choice, totally. Free will. Source will not make you expose the light that's inside of you. He will let you pile more mud on top of your light if you choose to. But on the other side, the message of hope for every one of us was written in that line. You can come to a place where the mud doesn't stick to you anymore. I don't know about, man, that just makes me happy as heck. I smile more in the last 6 months than I have in the last 6 years. It's crazy amazing how wonderful we are. They used a verse and they said that wonderfully and beautifully made. Friends, you are wonderfully and beautifully made. Whether you recognize it or believe it or not is irrelevant. It's still true. There is no requirements. And I want to say this again, and I know I'm kind of jumping. I don't really care. I'm not in any kind of a race. I'm here exposing truth to people who are hungry for truth. But the reality of it is, dear one, is that we've been told our whole life. So I'm gonna go back real quickly, and I just want to brief over. And why? Because the people that heard it and it hit them, I want to remind them, and those that didn't hear it, maybe I'll give you a chance to hear it. But the reality of it is there's three that I usually use, but one by one I'm finding at some point I will have a list for myself of all the things that Yeshua said that have zero requirements that are required according to Christianity. Why? Because they're not the protagonist, they're not the enemy that we're against. It's the archons and the methods that they use to program humans that we are against. I don't hate any Christians. Most of my family are Christians, and as far as I know, there's some people I'd rather not be around, but I don't hate none of them. Okay, but the reality of it is the belief systems that they're functioning in are getting very, very intolerable for me to be around. If you are feeling the same, don't be surprised. You're not a bad person. You're not turning into a bad way. Your consciousness is enlightening, and you are around people who do not want to or haven't yet perceived the need to enlighten. And it's not enlightened because they're already light. It is the removing of the mud that releases the light that we call enlightenment. You always were it. You've always been enlightened, but you haven't always been able to let that out. Now we're being offered an opportunity to wash ourselves clean, to baptize, to be birthed again. All of the metaphors in the Bible. You want to know how to be born again? You become the new person, the light that you are. And you do that by baptizing yourself and washing the dirt off of your light. That was what, all of those are just metaphors. None of them were literal. None of them had anything to do with anything. They were all metaphors. If a physical act can save you, friends, we don't need spiritual. You can do it by yourself. So, these concepts, the three major ones, and I've already discovered a few others, but I would have to, I need to get those written down one by one, but it's just not time yet. And probably by the time it is time, I will already have them all memorized, and I won't anyways. But the reality of the thing is, Yeshua tells us, do you not know that you're gods? How many of you hear and understand, and I'm going to even go a little further with you because I'm going to push you a little bit today. How many of you really believe that you are a spark, a piece of the divine supernatural? I just want you to think about it. I don't want anybody, you don't have to write me. I'm not your judge. You're your judge. But I would ask the question, are you fully believing that you are divine source light, no matter what your life is? Because until you believe that, you still haven't come into alignment. See, that's part of the concept of alignment. God says that you are me. You say, I'm not sure. That's called dissonance. It breaks coherence. Coherence is very important because coherence, in a nutshell, in the simplest nutshell, simply means you agreeing with the highest. And if you're not in coherence, you're in dissonance, which means confusion and separation. And if you had to choose those, totally in league with Source or totally in confusion about Source, which would you pick? The way you answer that is also determines the way that you'll live. I have, not that I'm better, I don't know why, I look back at my life and I can't explain all the times when I've known something was so drastically different about me than everybody else, and yet I was condemned on every level that I wasn't good enough and everybody was better and why couldn't I be, and all of the nonsense. And many of you have lived your whole lives the exact same way. You weren't, because you were different than everybody else. And if you find that out now, hopefully you'll come to peace with yourself that it's okay that I'm not like everybody else. James just told you that he ain't like them either. So James went through all of these things I've just explained. And so Yeshua says, do you not know that you are God? Do you not know that you are divine? And of course the answer by most people is no, I didn't. But you'll notice that he didn't say, well, you need to go down to your synagogue and you need your priest to put a cross on your head and you need to go in the room and you need to give him all your worldly riches and you need to give him your children and you need to do all of these things. And man, if you'll just do those things, you'll get bought out of purgatory. Did you notice that all of that is absent? He simply makes a blanket statement. Do you not know that you are God? And then the other one, he says about us, he says, you are light. So, you mean if I say 29 Hail Marys and I run around the block and I beat myself with a whip and I crawl on my knees and if I do all of these external things, then somehow I can be what he said I was? Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't find any of that in what he said. He simply made a blanket statement to humanity. You are light. You can believe it. You cannot believe it. You can struggle with it. You cannot struggle with it. But it doesn't change his words one iota. You are light. And being light is being God. The other one he says is, where is that light? He says, don't you know that the kingdom of God is in you? Did you notice that he didn't say that you need to run down to the local house and you need to get filled with the Spirit and speak in tongues and roll on the ground, or you need to go over here and you need to dress a certain way, or you need to stand and bob your head against a wall? He said none of those things. He simply said that you are. Those three, for me, destroyed Christianity. Because there wasn't anything that they were offering that I needed to become what he said I already was. And neither do you, dear one. If you choose to stay in that system, then please understand you're one of the ignorant that desires to stay in that system. But you don't have to stay in that system unless you impose that on yourself. But I'll tell you, the day when you step over this threshold and this body collapses on the ground dead and your spirit encounters an archon, you're going to be powerless because you don't know who you are. Do you understand that? The thing that keeps them from grabbing us is knowing who we are. The archons, the demiurges cannot go and grab source. The demiurges cannot go and grab the monad. They can't go and grab Barbello. They can't go and grab Sophia. They can't go and grab the Christ. They can't do that. Why? Because they know who they are. Very, very fatal failure of humanity to be ignorant of who you truly are. And you are light. For me, it makes it exceedingly easy. Why don't we just accept the fact that we are light and begin to search and go on a journey to find out, what does that really mean? What does it mean that I'm light? What does it mean that as I grow and as I learn and as I expose my light, I will begin to do supernatural acts of goodness and kindness that benefit humanity, and it will not be difficult for me to do those things because it's not me doing them anyway. It's the power that I am. I don't know about you guys, but that turns me on. So, I want to go through, and then we're going to pull off Yeah. I want to go through this next section because I think it will bless somebody. The next section is titled, The Risen Master Appears and Explains to James the Real Meaning of His Passion. So I've been telling you guys that he came to this earth, he went through what he went through, he taught truth everywhere he went, he died to hang his human physical body on a stick in front of the world and show the world that he wasn't dead. The body died, Yeshua did not. Your body will die, you will not. So let's look. And so, James finds out that they've crucified him. He hears about it. It distresses him because he's been with the Master for 3.5 years. And he says, they were waiting for the sign of his coming. Now, here's a piece that I saw that I'd never really seen before. All of the Christians keep telling you about Jesus coming back. And they got that out of these writings right here. But the coming back was actually meant him coming back there. He did come back. Jesus has already come back. Look at this. They were waiting for the sign of his coming, and it came after some days. I wonder why Christianity never told you that. Why is the world still waiting for Jesus to come back and reprove? Because they tell you the same words, but they're totally mutilated for what they actually meant. The scriptures tell us he was coming back to reprove the archons. And James says we were waiting for him to do that, and guess what happened? He did. So where does that then fit with the rest of the lie of the narrative? You've been lied to, friends. I'm sorrowful. You've been lied to. And there's a lot of good truth in the Bible that certainly we can use and hold on to. But there's so much that's not truth that is written around the truth that's in the Bible, it almost makes the truth indistinguishable. And it came after some days, James was walking on the mountains called Gagala, along with his disciples, who still listened to him with desire. So we see then that Yeshua died and James lost some of the disciples. There were only some of them that stayed with him. So they saw it. Yeshua was dead. Oh crap, we're out of here. And they had a comforter, and they said, this is the second teacher. So really, the comforter that you've been talked about, guys, what they did is they morphed James into Jesus and told you Jesus was the comforter. The comforter that the first century Gnostics saw and held was the brother, according to the statement of Yeshua, named James the Just. That was the comforter who came. And it's already happened. And they listened to him with desire. They had a comforter, and they said, this is the second teacher. So the vicar of Christ is really a massive metaphoric play that they laugh at the ignorance of humans because they've never known what the truth was. The vicar of Christ, if it was anybody, was James the Just. And the crowd dispersed, but James remained behind, and he prayed, as was his custom. And if you know anything about James, they said his knees were like the knees of a camel, that he constantly, 12 hours a day, he spent his time in prayer. Well, first, I want to tell you that has been concocted according to the prayer that has been propagated to an external God. That's not what James was doing. It would be more appropriate to say that James was in conversion with silence of self. So, in other words, James was meditating all the time. Remember, inside, not outside. And the crowd dispersed, but James remained behind and prayed, as was his custom. The master appeared to him, and he stopped praying. He embraced him, and he kissed him. What do you do with that? I'm over here meditating. I'm over here in inner self, talking with higher consciousness, exploring the silence and presence and resonance and beauty. And that's where he receives, and that's where you also receive divine downloads comes through your times of silence. And all of a sudden, Yeshua manifests. And he says, Rabbi, I have found you. Do you see that? Or do you not see the nuance of that? James is in a room, he's meditating, he's searching inside, and Yeshua manifests and he said, I found you. You want to know how to find him? You were just given the perfect pattern. He lives inside of you. And he stopped praying, he embraced him, and he kissed him. So that means there had to be some physicalness to him. He had manifested in matter. Okay? I got a picture here, and so I feel like it's appropriate. What that statement is, if you don't know what was really going on, you may lose it. But we have a picture of Adam and Hua, feminine and masculine, and the Bible tells us that they did not know because there was no sin, because they were in some clouds, so to speak. And then they came to know each other after they received their flesh bodies. Do you know what that picture is about? There was no consciousness of sin as long as they were functioning in pure light. You want to know why there is no sin? Because in pure light, there is no sin. You can smile and be happy. You will fail, I promise you. And I don't say that you always be light on yourself, but I say once you recognize it and you face it, embrace it, and release it. And if you'll learn those 3 words and put them into your life every single day, face it, embrace it, and release it, I guarantee you the condemnation that you've been living under will cease to exist. There is now therefore no condemnation to those who walk according to the Spirit, not the flesh. I just gave you Paul's whole teaching on how to free yourself. I have found you. I've heard of the sufferings you endured, and I was greatly troubled. You know my compassion. Because of this, I wished as I reflected upon it that I would never see these people again. So once again, in honesty, James is confessing his faults to Yeshua. I wish I'd never go. I don't ever want to go back to those people. I don't want to be around. I just can't stand it. You know why? Because he's enlightening. And the things that he used to tolerate and put up with now make him sick to his stomach. Some of you are experiencing that and you don't even know what it is yet. But that's what it is. As you enlighten, things that are not functioning at that vibration are going to become uncomfortable for you to be around. They must be judged. Because of this, I wished, as I reflected upon it, that I would never see these people again. They must be judged for what they have done, for what they have done is not right. So what do we see there? We see human. That's not his higher self. That's human. We are 2-part beings. Part of is flesh, and the other part of us is light. So let's see. And the master says, James, James, I'm saying this to every one of you, please open your hearts and minds and listen. James, do not be concerned for me or these people. I am the one who was within me. Now I'm going to say this to you. And I hope some of you will join with me, because I don't want you to just say the words. I want you to say the words because you're seeing the reality of it. He says, do not be concerned with all of this earthly stuff. I, the one that am here talking to you, I am the one that was within me. Do you hear it? Look at yourself in peace and love and honesty and say to yourself, I am the one that is within me. And even if that's not a reality for you at this point, the fact that you could recognize and even comprehend that is a very, very, very positive sign of the direction that you're walking. We need to have direction sometimes. If we go our whole life only doing what we've done, we have a direction. Why do you stay the person that you are? Because you know that way. Well, if you begin to recognize that you need to be, that you really are something else, and that you need to rid yourself of this, then that's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But every revelation propels you ahead. And so he comforts James by saying, James, the one that's standing here is the one that was in there. Why are you worried about these physical things? And then listen to what he says. Do not be concerned for me or these people. How do you, if you still have a glitch about Hitler, and I know many of you do, I'm going to tell you something. Do not be concerned about Hitler. Do not be concerned about the things that are wrong that we're seeing. That doesn't mean that our flesh says it's okay. You understand, Yeshua never condemned James for saying this is not right and these people need to pay. I've said that 1,000,000 times. Every one of us have. So there's no condemnation in that. It just is a picture to us of perspective. You're worried about the physical things and you're not worried about the things of the light. Why? Because you don't know about them. And so he says, this is so amazing. I am the one who was within me. Do you know that I can say to you today that when I leave this human body, that the one that leaves this human body is the one that was within me? You are the same. So what are we worried about? Why did Paul say don't be like the pagans who don't know the truth? Because it doesn't mean anything. You're in a material world functioning. This material world means nothing. It's going to die. It's going to go away. It's going to rebuild itself. It's going to be destroyed again. It's going to happen again, and it's going to go away again, and it's going to happen again, and it's going to go away again. But you, dear one, are the thing that is important. You will never go away. And until you can see that in your heart and release that into the air, I am eternal. And know that that's true. You can say the words, but saying the words is not the same as knowing the words. So listen. I am the one who was within me. Never did I suffer at all. And this is where we get back to the separateness, friends. All Yeshua is doing is showing you, speaking modern psychological enlightenment truth that is being taught this very day. That's all he's doing. It hasn't changed one iota. And I was not distressed. Well, we see pictures in the Passions of the Christ and in the pictures that are written in the Bible of how horribly distressed he was. Yes, he was potent because he didn't fight back. He didn't defend himself. But now we find that that may have been an outworking of the physical body, but inside he was never distressed. Is anybody listening today? Because my friends, that right there totally is beginning to change my perspective about suffering. These people did not harm me. All of those horrible things that have been done to you physically may have hurt you physically, but physically is a temporary house that's growing old and gonna collapse and die. It did not hurt you. And until you have that revelation of reality inside of you, you will continue to live in the world of pain and suffering. Are you hearing? This is huge, guys. So, never did I suffer at all. How could someone say that? I know Christians that would have argued with Yeshua if he had said that. They'd have got into an arguing match with him. Why? Because you needed to suffer. Look at what those horrible people did to you. And he goes, all but peace here. And I was not distressed. These people did not harm me. Rather, all of this was inflicted upon a figure of the rulers. Oh. So when you hurt a being of the light, you hurt the archons, not the being of light. The just God became angry with you since you had been a servant to him. Because of this, you have the name James the Just. You see how you will become sober once you have seen me. Any of you remember the line that Paul said? He said, so be sober and be vigilant. The concept of sober in this indication means one who is fully, in their full capacity, fully awake. That is sober. That is a reference to you being your light. Right now, you're in a drunken stupor. You're in an illusion. It's not reality, but you will fight people that the you that is, that's really you. And if that's the argument you want to have, you got to have it elsewhere, because I won't listen to that nonsense. If that's who you are, I don't want to be around you no ways. And you will become sober once you have seen me. He's not talking physically seen him. Once you have seen the light that was inside him in yourself, you will become sober. It's beautiful. It's empowering. It's amazing. It's wonderful. That I will no longer walk around like a drunk man going through life, staggering through every mishap and circumstance that happens, living at the will of everyone. I will be sober. Full clarity, full coherence, full alignment, just being who I am. You will see how you will become sober once you have seen me. You stopped praying because you are a just man of God. And you embraced and you kissed me. I tell you the truth, you have set in motion great anger and wrath against yourself by doing so. So what does that mean, dear one? I'm going to tell you the truth that all of the people that are making millions of dollars on YouTube won't tell you. The more that you enlighten, the more that the archons see you and hate you. Because you are something that causes fear in the archons. Absolutely. But if you can get this revelation, this is a revelation. If you can get this revelation, you won't accomplish that without exposing your light, because you have no power without the light. You're just a human. Okay, so as you expose your light, they will come. As you expose your light, you also become sovereign over them, and they no longer have the power against you. But that doesn't mean that they won't do things to try to affect your life. Happens with people that they'll send into your path. You know, that one person that just agitates the hell out of you that does exactly what you do. So, he said, I tell you the truth. You have set in motion great anger and wrath against yourself. But look at why it happened. He says, but, remember, but negates everything said prior to it. But this has happened so that these other things might occur. So in other words, even the things we think bad are sent for a good purpose. We encounter them. Do you hear me, dear ones? Do some studying on Mary Magdalene and find out why they called her the one of sorrow, the one of sufferings. She suffered more than anybody. She was the closest friend and kissed Yeshua on the lips, and yet she ended up not even being known of, and religion wrote her name out and turned her into a whore. You tell me what kind of hurt you can do to a human more than that. James was fearful and he wept. Once again, James is in a place. He's becoming enlightened, but he's still a human. I love his purity of humanity. But James was fearful and he wept. He was greatly troubled. And they sat down together on a rock, and the master said to him, James, this is how you will face this sufferings. Please listen if you are someone who is intentionally trying to walk the path towards light and truth, the straight and narrow path, if you would. Because he's about to tell us how to overcome. This is how you will face these sufferings. First off, do not be sad. This is all just part of the game, friends. How many of you have begun to have the revelation that the time that you spend in humanity is just a game? It's not your reality. It is. It's a simulation. So dig this. This is how you will face this sufferings. Do not be sad. The flesh is weak. And it will get you, and it will get what is ordained for it. In other words, death. Pain, suffering, your flesh will. Not you, your flesh. But as for you, do not be timid or afraid. So, right now, for whatever reason, we're living in a time, and this is a special time. And so maybe we won't live through what they went through the Crusades when they killed every Gnostic that they could find. But you have to understand, Yeshua is speaking to James, and they killed James just a very short time after this dialogue. Beat him, bashed his head in, and threw him off of a wall because he was teaching that everyone is light. They hated it so much. Well, in James' situation, bless his heart, he was 200 years before Christianity was, so he wasn't even teaching Christians about them being light. He was telling the Jews that they were light so that they didn't walk under the Torah. That's what the whole Bible dialogue. But that is applicable in everything that has existed since then. Christianity is nothing but Judaism with a different name. Islam is nothing but Christianity and Judaism with a different name. It's all control over you and to keep you from recognizing that you're divine. That's all it is. If you go with it, you'll do exactly what they intended. You will stay blind until eventually, at one life point, you hopefully come in and the light gets turned on for you. This is a time when the light getting turned on is going to be easier than any time in the close future. Okay, 24,000 years ago, people were living above where we are in consciousness in Atlantis. And before them was a dispensation in Lemuria. All high conscious times. Cycles, they came and they went, and humanity dropped down. The Atlanteans were destroyed. A few Atlanteans made it into the time frame that we did, just like Atlanteans made it through the cataclysmic flood that destroyed mankind into the dispensation that we're in now. They know that's true. Solomon had contact with these initiates. They know that's true. You don't, but it is known. And so he says, when James heard this, he wiped away the tears that were in his eyes, and he was greatly relieved for the sadness that he felt. So do you see Master condemning him at all for having human feelings? Do you one time ever see him tell James, you're a horrible, stupid person, James. Why are you being sad? In fact, what I find is love and compassion, because he understands that we have this human facet that we have to deal with. We have not yet, if you would, removed enough dirt that we have allowed our life to control our flesh. That is the purpose, is to remove the mud from our higher consciousness and allow our higher consciousness, full consciousness, pure consciousness, God consciousness to take control of me. And when that happens, everything is off the table, because no one can control you. Wow. Well, I guess I've been a little bit long-winded, but what's new, right? I hope you guys have been blessed. I send this out into the universe. The intention is love and kindness and light. I believe I've accomplished that. I hope you guys will take it in the spirit of love and consciousness and light. We'll be back on Wednesday, should the universe will. I will sow more good seed into you. We really are amazingly blessed, guys. I lived my whole life as a Christian pastor believing that there had to be more. 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 Something's not working here. I've done the things. I've done all the things that the Christian people say that we're supposed to do, and yet I'm not seeing the people healed like I want to see them healed. I've walked through the hospitals on purpose in the ICU units as a pastor, confessing that every person in that ICU ward would be healed, and it did not work. I know why now. But it doesn't mean just because it didn't work that it doesn't work. It simply means that I was not yet ready. Get ready, get ready, get ready. Because there is some amazing things that are going to boggle human minds in ways we can't even understand. Always remember that as you reveal your light, you're now responsible for showing your light and exposing your light and being your light in front of everyone that the universe puts in front of you. How do we love? By being who we are, because we are love. God is love, and in him is no darkness at all. Well, where does God live? He lives in me. So if God is love, and in him there is no darkness at all, how many of you can say that without any form of a consciousness, the statement, with no darkness at all? Or are you still functioning in who you are in the flesh? Because you in the flesh, I guarantee you, there's darkness. But that's not you. And it's when you get that revelation in your heart and in your head that things begin to radically shift. Bless you. We love you guys. We're nobody speaking the most profound words that have ever existed in humanity. Shalom and namaste.